My name is Vicki P. I was born in 1951, August 26, 1951, in St. Paul, Minnesota. My parents, their name was Roe and Bernie Myers. I lived in, then we moved to Minneapolis, and I lived there until I was 6 years old. I was in first grade. We moved then to Fort Myers, Florida. I grew up in Fort Myers, Florida. I lived there until I was 13. We belonged to a Jewish synagogue. It was a very small, 28,000 people in Fort Myers at that time. Very few Jewish people. My uncle owned Nebraska warehouses. When I was 13, he had talked to my dad. My dad had been selling real estate in Fort Myers, and things weren't doing very well at that time in Punta Gorda, Florida. We moved because my uncle was expanding his warehouse from downtown to out west at 91st and F, and he wanted my dad to go into business with him. So my parents moved me at age 13 to Omaha, Nebraska. That wasn't a very good choice as far as I was concerned and as far as my mother was concerned. I cried all the way from Fort Myers, Florida to Sarasota, Florida, which is about 75 miles, along with my mother. I had been a cheerleader in Fort Myers Junior High. I had a boyfriend in Fort Myers, and they were moving me to some God-forsaken place called Omaha, Nebraska. All I knew is it was colder there. My parents brought me here. Also, I had two brothers. I forgot to mention them. Bruce Myers was born 2.5 years after I was, and Michael was born 2.5 years after Bruce was. So we all moved to Omaha, and it was March of when I was 13. Do you know what March looks like in Omaha, Nebraska? Pretty bad. And we moved here. We lived at 87th and Center. I remember we rented a house, and I went to Arbor Heights Junior High, and my mom took me there the first day, and I went to my class, and I was miserable, of course, the whole time. And the day after we moved here, my class was going to Lincoln because they were studying Nebraska. So we were going to Lincoln to learn all about the state of Nebraska. I could have cared less about learning about the state of Nebraska because I didn't want to be here in the first place. My core teacher at that time, you had core teachers back in those days, and she introduced me to some very nice girls. And so we took a bus there, and those were the days that you had to dress up to go places. It was a field trip to Lincoln. And we went and learned all about the state of Nebraska, which I was not interested in, of course. That got over with. We came back to the junior high and went home. Then I started, I had to go to Temple. Well, before I started Saturday school, the head of at Temple Israel, the person who is in charge of getting you to join, who was the Friedman, Willard Friedman, Willard and his wife, and he had 2 daughters and 2 sons, and they invited my parents and me and my two brothers over there to meet their kids and to learn about Temple Israel, because that's where we were going to join. It was a Reform synagogue, and we were Reform. So I met Sue Friedman and Ann Friedman, and I am still friends with Sue and Ann and the brothers, but Sue and I and Ann and I, we correspond a lot. So we're still friends. So I went to my first day of Saturday school, and I met Mibsy Brooks, who was Rabbi Brooks's daughter. And we became friends, and I am still friends with Mibsy. I did not like Saturday school because I never had Jewish friends, a lot of Jewish friends. And back in those days, nobody moved into Omaha and nobody moved out of Omaha. It was a very insular community, not real welcoming. Mibsy and I became friends. Like I said, I was in 8th grade, so I still went to 9th grade at Arbor Heights, and then I went to high school at Westside High School. Now, when I was in the beginning of 9th grade or the end of 8th grade, I got involved with the youth group at Temple. And there was a pool party to initiate the incoming freshmen, 9th graders, to join the Temple youth group. And it was at someone's house, and they had a pool. And we went to the pool party, and Mibsy went, and I had met some other people, and I was okay with the Jewish kids. And I met someone named Jeff Perlmeter. And Jeff and I started dating. So I was at the end of my 9th grade year, and we started dating. And we dated I dated him for about 2.5 years. But it wasn't love. I mean, it was love at first sight, but we broke up and we got back together again and broke up and got back together again. He went to college. He was a year older than me. He went to college at the University of Miami, and I graduated a year after that, and I went to the University of Oklahoma and met a lot of people, there, and I went for Rush and everything, and I pledged AE Phi. Most girls from Omaha always pledged SDT at Oklahoma. I pledged AE Phi. Now, I was a legacy because my mother had been an AE Phi at the University of Minnesota. But that had I just liked the girls. I felt more comfortable with the girls in AE Phi. So I pledged AE Phi, and I was in the sorority for 2 years. I went 2 years to college. I was in special education, but Jeff and I had broken up, and then we'd gotten back together again, and we'd been together for about a year and a half, and we decided we wanted to get married. I was 19 years old. And I liked school, but I wasn't, those were the days that you really didn't have to, and my parents didn't make a big deal about it. So Jeff and I got married. We were married in 1971, August 21st, 1971. We moved to San Antonio, Texas, after he had another year left of college. So we moved to Miami, Florida, because he went to the University of Miami. We lived there for 9 months. I aided in a Montessori school. I had an aunt and uncle who lived there. And we met a couple who I have remained friends with. The woman, she and her husband are still married. Jeff and I were married for 9.5 years. We had 2 daughters. Amy was born in San Antonio, Texas, where we had lived. Then we moved here, and Carrie was born here. Jeff and I got divorced when the kids were 4 and 6, and it was hard on me, hard on the kids, but we've made it. It hasn't always been easy. I have made Omaha my home because we moved here, and Amy was born in San Antonio, but Carrie and we moved here, and I never thought about leaving here. Like I said, Omaha has changed. Omaha used to be no one moved in, nobody moved out. Now it's not that way, which is good. I got involved with National Council of Jewish Women. I was a vice president for a while. I got multiple sclerosis when I was 21. I had my first symptoms when I was 21. I had my daughter because at that time you could get pregnant, and actually when you are pregnant you don't have symptoms for some reason. I had a normal childbirth. I had a C-section for whatever reason. They couldn't get her out and stuff like that. And I was fine. After I had Amy, your body kind of does a little change, and I did have some exacerbations after she was born. But I was fine. I was diagnosed relapsing remitting, which is you have something and then it goes totally away. I was in trooping theater. I was involved in all kinds of things in the community. And once in a while I'd have something, and it would last for 4 to 6 weeks, and then it would go totally away. I had Carrie, my second child, Carrie Beth, was born in 1976. Same thing. I had perfect pregnancies. She was born C-section because Amy was born C-section. And then, like I said, Jeff and I got divorced. It was hard on me. Thank goodness, thank God for my parents and my friends. I had wonderful friends here who helped me out a lot. Jeff was the dutiful father that he should be. He saw the kids twice a week, once a month for the weekend and stuff like that. It was still hard. The kids were young, and then it was time to have the kids bat mitzvahs, so we had to go through the bat mitzvah and all that stuff, the bat mitzvahs, and it wasn't easy, but I made it through. I met a wonderful man. I was single for 8 years. I was raising my kids. I was single for 8 years. I met someone, a friend of my mother's fixed me up with somebody from Minneapolis, or St. Paul, I'm sorry, who used to come here on business. And we got fixed up and we hit it off, and we dated for 8 years. But it was a long distance relationship, so it wasn't, it went for 8 years, and it was wonderful, but anytime I went to visit him, we were on vacation. He died after 8 years of us dating, and I remember saying to myself, and it was very hard. He was a wonderful man, and he accepted me for who I was and what I could do and what I couldn't do. And at that time, I was not using a cane. I wasn't using anything. I was still good. The MS hadn't gotten me, and the MS still doesn't have me. But anyway, when he died, I said to myself, I can't do this again. And actually, I need to go back. Okay. Going back to when Jeff and I got divorced, the day that he moved out, which was 1996 or 97, I got a knock on my door, and I went to the door, and I opened it, or I said, "Who is it?" And he said, "It's John Robinson." Well, John Robinson and I had known each other for as long as I'd been in Omaha, because my aunt and uncle, Dave and Sue Myers, were friends with John's parents. Um, and so, and John worked at the Mart, so anytime I needed anything at the Mart, I'd call John and order something. And actually, he was in real estate, and when Jeff and I bought our first house in Park West, he was the real estate person that handled the situation. It was a house that was built by someone. And so John and I had been friends for years and years, for as long as since I was 13 when I moved to Omaha. And so he said, "Well, I heard that Jeff was moving out today, and I just wanted to see how you were doing." And I said, "Oh my gosh, that is really nice." And that was the end of it. Fast forward a few years later, I get a call from John one day, and he said, "Hi, what's going on?" I said, "Not much." In the meantime, his wife, Judy Lincoln, had died. And of course, I knew Judy from high school. And so he called me one day and said, "Would you be interested in maybe going out?" And I said, "Okay, let's go out." Actually, we both had a bat mitzvah that we were going to. And he was friends with them, and I was friends with them. And the bat mitzvah was at Bethel, and the party was at a country club. I can't think of the name of the country club. It wasn't a Jewish country club. And so he said, "Well, I'm not going to go to the service, which was at Bethel, but why don't I pick you up and we can go to the party so you don't have to go yourself?" And I said, "Well, that'd be great." So he picked me up. We went to the party. We had a nice time. And when he took me home, I went into my garage. I had the door opener to my garage, and I went in my garage, and I said, "Well, thank you very much. It was fun." And I started to walk away. And he said, "Oh, excuse me, I would like to walk you up to your apartment." And I said, "You don't have to walk me up to my apartment. I can do it on my own." Because I was very independent, and I didn't want anybody to do anything for me. And he said, "Well, it's just the nice thing to do." And I said, "I can do it myself, thank you." And that was it. And he left, and I went upstairs to my apartment, and that was that. A couple weeks later, I had seen him, and I had told him as we went to this party and talked, I said, "I am not going to do this again. There is no way I can do this I can't go through this again. I can't be involved with someone else and then lose them to either death or something else. I just can't. I can do it on my own." And I had learned to kind of be with girlfriends, and I didn't need a man in my life. But he kind of persisted, and we went out a couple more times, and we were talking one night, and I said, "I wish there was something I could do for you." And he said, "Well, maybe there is." And I said, "What?" And he said, "How about me moving in here?" And my jaw dropped, and I thought, "Are you kidding?" I said, I don't know. And he said, "I'm not going to pressure you." He said, I'm going to give you as much time as you need. You think about it, and just, we'll talk and let me know. And I'm sure I talked to my parents, and I talked to some friends. He said I talked to the world, because I do have a lot of friends and everything like that, but I said, I don't remember that. Anyway, I made the decision. Oh, I want to interject one thing. Um, my kids were not crazy about me dating. They, they'd had me alone for many years before Nathan came into my life. And, and then when he died, I thought, well, this isn't going to happen again. But they liked John. They did like John. Amy wasn't crazy about Nathan and stuff like that, so it was kind of hard. They liked John, and he came over one night, and I said, okay, I think I've made the decision. And he said, okay, what is it? I said, let's do it. And he moved in. And that was 12 and a half years ago. And my apartment is set up. I have a 3-bedroom apartment. I'm at Parkwood Terrace, Belgrade's apartment. Eddie Belgrade built me a 3-bedroom. When I moved in there, my youngest daughter, Carrie, was still in high school at Burke. And I wanted a 3rd bedroom for her, to have her own 3rd bedroom. And Amy was at University of Kansas and was coming home, so I needed a bedroom for her to come home periodically. So he did not have any 3 bedrooms, but he built me a 3-bedroom at Parkwood Terrace. I am the only person in the whole place at Parkwood Terrace on 91st and Western that has a 3-bedroom. When John moved in, I said, he knew the apartment and everything, and I said that you can have the 3rd bedroom. It's your own master bath and your own big closet and everything. And 12 and a half years later, we are still together. We love each other. We have not gotten married. In our minds, we don't need to be married on paper. We are committed, and that's fine for us. I think that's about it. We've gone through some issues. Of course, everyone does. But I'm happy. My disease has run its course. I've had it for 48 years, which is a long time. I'm still driving. I do use a walker in the apartment. I use a scooter, an electric scooter, when I'm out of the apartment, just to get around more easily. I do my own shopping, although it gets a little difficult at times. But I'm good. I lost my mother about 9 years ago. Both my parents were at the Blumkin home. My dad got Parkinson's, and Mom at the time felt she couldn't take care of him, so they both, on their own, moved to the Blumkin, and I have nothing but wonderful things to say about the Blumkin. They took care of them. I visited them often. Mom died about 4 years after she moved into the Blumkin, and Dad died 4 years after Mom did. I was very close with my dad. I was not close with my dad for a long time. In fact, I don't think, and this is going back, I don't think I spoke to my dad for a year after he moved me to Omaha, Nebraska, because I was pretty miserable. But things changed, and I thank him every day for moving me to Omaha, Nebraska, because it's been a wonderful city, and I think that's about it. Okay, going back, I said that I went to the University of Oklahoma. I went, a girl named Lori Lutbeg lived here, and I went to college with her, and so I knew her from Omaha, although I don't think she had lived in Omaha. I can't really remember. I can't remember if there were any other girls that went to Oklahoma from Omaha that year. I know that Omaha was a lot of Omaha kids went to the University of Oklahoma back in those days. Um, when I got to Oklahoma, my roommate was from Kansas City. And we all went through Rush, so we all went to earlier before school started. Went through Rush. The Jewish girls at that point got dropped from all the non-Jewish sororities, because in those days you didn't do a non-Jewish sorority, and vice versa. So there were no non-Jewish girls in my sorority. Ellen, my roommate from Kansas City, got dropped from both SDT and AE Phi. No one ever knew why. But we remained friends. It was kind of tough at times, and she kind of was angry about a lot of things, and I understood. When I went to the University of Oklahoma, I made friends with a lot of new kids. I had a good friend from Dallas, Betty, and Betty actually ended up marrying, they met at our wedding, Steve Perlman, who lives here now. And I was good friends with Steve Perlman in high school because Jeff, my ex-husband, was good friends with Steve. So I knew Steve from a long time ago, and he ended up marrying Betty. They ended up, they ended up getting a divorce after we did. And then but my years at Oklahoma I went 2 years to school, like I said, and then Jeff and I got married. And I went back to school a couple times thinking I'd finish school because I really wanted to do special education. But I never did because then I got divorced and then I had the kids and I just didn't have the inclination to do so. When living here, like I said, I was active in National Council of Jewish Women, and I got into that because my Aunt Sue Myers, my dad's brother's wife, was very active in council. So my mom got involved in that, and I got involved in that, and that's how I got involved in the trooping theater that they used to have. Shirley Fogel used to pick the people that she wanted to be in the plays, and we went to the schools around the city and put on the plays, and that was always lots of fun. And I have also been involved I'm on the Historical Society board, and I love doing that because I love learning about the history of Omaha, because I wasn't here from the very beginning, but I know a lot of people that were, so it's fun. I'm also co-president now of the Love Board, which is the League of Volunteers for the Elderly through the Blumkin Home. And I'm doing that with Ricky Skog right now. And I really haven't done much else. I don't go to luncheons and stuff like that anymore. Sometimes it's hard to get into people's homes and places like that because it's hard for me to get up steps and things like that. But I still like the city, and this is my hometown. My girls don't live here, unfortunately. I have one, Amy lives in Chicago with her 2 kids, Sammy and Tolly, and Carrie lives in Kansas City with her 3 kids, Ava, Jack, and Mabel. And I don't see them a whole lot, but because it's kind of hard for me to get down to Kansas City and vice versa, they're so busy. But we FaceTime and talk on the phone. Yes, I've been through a lot in my life. My disease, my divorce, my death of a very close person in my life. But I live by something, and it is a saying, and it is, do what you can with what you have where you are, which is kind of what I live by. I have that saying up on my mirror of my bathroom, and I say it every morning, and I say it a number of times. I also say, you know, I have MS, but MS doesn't have me. Yeah, sometimes it does have me, and sometimes I cry, and I don't want to have MS, but there's nothing I can do about it. And in spite of it, I keep going. I do what I can with what I have, where I am. And I would like my children to know that I love them, and I've made mistakes. God knows we all have. But learn from someone who keeps going somehow. And I thank my wonderful, wonderful friends. I've got a good friend coming over tonight to help me get on my iPad, because I don't know how to do that kind of stuff. I got a new iPad, and I'm not real good with the new stuff in the world. I like to go back to the old stuff. Thank you. I just wanted to let everyone know that I work out twice a week at a gym called MS Forward. It is now on 138th and Q, just off 138th and Q. They've moved 3 times, so I can't ever remember where they are now. But the person who owns the gym is Daryl Kuchera, who, when he started the gym, he was going to open it for people who were athletes. When he was getting ready to open it, he got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. So he changed his reasoning for opening a gym to help people with MS. And I have gone to work out there. I've been going there for about 15 years. Like I said, he's moved different places, and I've followed him. And the first time I heard about the gym, I was in an MS support group, which has since then disbanded. And we took a field trip to the gym, which was then on Industrial Highway over by Oakview. And I remember driving out there, and we walked in there, and there was about 20 of us, and we went through the gym, and he showed us what there was. And I said, I'm not driving out here to work out. Who wants to do that? You know, I was not an athlete. I did do gymnastics for a while. I did dance for a while in Florida. I never found the right dance teacher when we moved to Omaha. But I said, I'm not coming here. Well, long story short, I've been there 15 to 20 years, and now they can't get rid of me. Because I've made a lot of friends there. We work out. We all know each other's lives and what's going on with our lives. I've seen a lot of people die, and that's been hard to go through people's deaths who have had MS. You don't die from MS. You die from complications that happen in whenever. But yes, so the gym has been a big part of my life these last 20 years, and I'm very grateful for that. My dad and I had a very special relationship. We weren't close when I was a young child, because in those days, the dad worked, and then he came home, and then he was the disciplinarian. And whenever my brothers and I got into a fight or something, my mother would always say, just wait till your dad comes home. The mothers didn't have any, you know. So Dad was a disciplinarian. He worked. So we weren't really close. When we moved to Fort Myers, and he was going to Punta Gorda to do his real estate, I remember going there with him, like sometimes on a Sunday, and coming home, and he would always say to me, tap my leg so I don't fall asleep. Well, you know, I wasn't thinking about, oh, we're going to crash if I don't do that. But anyway, so we still weren't close, because I was angry at my dad for many years. When I had Amy, that's when my dad became my father. because he was established with the business. He wasn't working 24/7 like he was when I was growing up. And he became Amy's grandfather and did things with Amy, then Carrie, that he never had the opportunity to do with me and my brothers. So I always say that he became my father when I had Amy and Carrie. And we always had a close relationship after that. He was my protector. And he didn't want me to hurt, didn't want me to be without things just because I was divorced or just because I had MS. And he was angry about a lot of those things. And I think that he lost a little of his religion because of those things, because he thought, where's God? Where was God in all of this when Vicki really needed it? I never had that issue. I always was, God I always knew was with me somewhere, doing something to help me get through all of this. When Mom and Dad died, and they were a fun-loving couple and had tons of friends, and everyone loved them, and Dad was always laughing and always had a smile on his face. And when they died, there was some money left to the kids, Bruce, Michael, and me, and we wanted to give back to the community what my parents always enjoyed doing, and that was laughing and having fun. And that's when we established a fund to bring in comedians twice a year for the community, but mainly for the Blumpkin home, and give back to them what my parents got from Omaha. And we do this twice a year, and there's probably gonna be some changes, but that is something that the community will never forget my parents, because we have given back to the community with the legacy of laughter. You know, my dad went to the University of Minnesota. He also was in the Navy, and I can't remember what came first, the chicken or the egg, because it was during the war, Second World War. He majored in journalism. He was a great writer. Nothing serious. Dad was not a serious writer, although he did write some serious things, but he always put a little laughter into his writing. And he, in his later years, wrote, and he always wrote stories. When the kids were born, when I got married, when there were occasions, he always had a story to write. And he had them and he wrote them on his old typewriter, and I think my brother Bruce still has that typewriter, because you don't get rid of something like that, because it's nothing like now you do everything online and everything. This was his old typewriter. And Dad kept all these stories, and we have all these stories. He decided to put them into a book. And my brother Michael, who is also very crazy, kind of like my dad, used to come to visit Omaha, because he lives in Chicago, and he and my dad would spend the entire weekend writing this book, getting all these stories that he had written all these years, and they got it into a book, and they call it the Book of Bobo. And it's here I think it's in the Historical Society, if not in the library. And it's a wonderful book, and I go back and read some of the things, and I cry, and I laugh, and that was my dad. And I remember saying at his funeral at Temple that I am who I am because of my dad. I'd like to say one more thing. You know, I said at my dad's funeral, I am who I am because of my dad, but I am who I am because of my parents, and I thank them for everything. And I thank the Jewish community too. Thank you. I would like to, at this time, thank my wonderful sons-in-laws, Brian Thomas, who is married to Amy, and they have 2 children, and John Raybroker, who is married to Carrie, and they have 3 children. And my sons-in-laws are very special to me, and I hope I'm very special to them, because they are making my girls very happy, and they have brought me 5 wonderful grandchildren. Thank you.